Live.
Here
Hey
we are.
guys, welcome back to some more videos. Horrorboy465, aka Nate Murphy, the Explorer 4 here. Welcome back to some more reviews. And today, doing a broadcast with a very special guest, and that guest is
John Grande,
Will Halstead,
the best in the world.
part of the Sci-Fi Collective.
And today we're going to be doing a retrospective on Wes Craven. Of course, Wes Craven being a legendary director, especially in the realm of horror, definitely a master of horror, and he is greatly missed. And rest in peace to Wes Craven. He's a genius, and his work will live on. And he was a legend, in horror, and he was a great director. But we're going to be talking about some of Wes Craven's films here in a second, but we're going to talk about Wes Craven as director first, and sort of give our thoughts on him as director, and talk about some of his qualities and stuff like that, and what made him the great director that he was. And so John Grande, if you guys wanna give your guys' thoughts real fast on Wes Craven, you guys can go ahead if you want to.
Yeah, sure thing. I'll lead off. I honestly was I've been a huge horror fan since I'm a little kid, and we kind of together grew up watching a lot of the same horror movies. I remember we rented Halloween 2 from the...
You introduced to me at 4th grade. We were 9 years old.
Yeah, man, we go back ways. But the first Wes Craven movie I ever saw was the original Elm Street, and I remember just being enamored by the story that he told. And I think the biggest thing about Wes Craven in his career is the sense of realism and the ideas that he got via using all of these movies. Like, he got Last House on the Left. That was his response to one of the wars. And The Hills Have Eyes. He always thought that weird-looking people would work better than a prosthetic you slap on somebody's face. And of course, with the Elm Street, it was all about this boy that came back from the war, and he said he would fall asleep, he would die, and his parents drugged him, and then he was dead. I think he used a lot of real-life horrors and put them to film, and he used them effectively to make great horror movies that stand the test of time. I think that's the genius of Wes Craven. He kind of used the real world to his advantage.
Yeah, and one thing that he does that I think all great filmmakers and directors do is that none of his films really feel too similar to each other.
No.
Like, you look at Last House on the Left, and you look at Nightmare on Elm Street, and you look at Scream, if you told me they're from 3 different people, I would believe you. I mean, granted, some of the sequels would feel the same, like the first 3 Screams, obviously they're the same, but even if you just compare Scream 1 and Scream 4, they're kind of totally different. Like, Scream 4 is a lot more self-aware of itself, almost. Nightmare on Elm Street is really just, kind of like classic slasher kind of vibe, and Last House and Hills Have Eyes really just have their own unique style to it that I don't really know how to describe.
They're like more gritty before he became more with the Nightmare on Elm Street, and then so on after that. Like, those were more gritty grindhouse,
very realistic films, very realistic horror films.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, he's one of those guys that he started from nothing, and he kind of he made so much out of nothing with the first film we'll eventually touch on, Last House on the Left. I mean, he just knocked it out of the park with that one.
Well, with Wes Craven, I agree with you guys about pretty much everything. And I do agree with you guys. His movies, they all do have different tones. Nightmare on Elm Street, especially the first movie, is definitely a different tone than the sequels. The sequels is when Freddy started talking more, and the first movie was more of a sinister, it dealt with nightmares and dreams, but it still kept it serious. It wasn't trying to, go off, and some of the sequels did some great ideas. In my opinion, 3 and 4, the Dream Master and Dream Warriors, they went off and did the whole Dream Warriors aspect and the Dream Master and the soul collecting and powers and stuff like that. But, the first Nightmare on Elm Street tried to keep it, it's still scary. Even though the subject matter was done with a nightmare and dreams, it still tried to keep it serious. And in my opinion, it was actually it was done well. And and Hills of Eyes and Last House and all these movies that I've seen. I haven't seen all of Wes Craven's movies, but I've heard about the ones I haven't seen. Even the ones I didn't watch, I've heard things about them. I've heard about story and stuff like that. And I agree with you guys with that. His films, and one of the good things is that his movies, they were all different experiences when you watch them, different movies, and that was cool because every time he'd make a new movie, it'd be a new masterpiece. It'd be a new classic, and I really do like that, and that's really cool. And I always liked seeing interviews with Wes Craven and commentaries, because the guy seemed very smart about what he was doing, and he seemed like he was, very much aware of, trying to, create these worlds and these characters that people will remember for a long time. And I always remember his interviews and his commentaries to be very, very, very awesome, because he seemed like one of those geniuses about horror. And it was really cool to see him in interviews and commentaries, and I've always enjoyed him in interviews and commentaries. They're really entertaining, and they're really, really cool to watch because he's a very smart man. And when you hear about with Last House, behind that movie was the Vietnam War was going on, and a lot of stuff in the culture at the time was reflected through Last House. And like you guys said with Hills of Eyes and Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff, just hearing him talk about these movies and talk about how he came up with these ideas, it was all very, very cool. And Wes Craven always seemed like a genius. I use that word a lot with Wes Craven because just the way that he describes his stories and he writes his characters, and it's just genius. And he will be remembered, and he is greatly missed, and he's a legend in the horror genre.
Totally agree. Like you said, it's almost like when you hear him speak in interviews, it's almost as if he's the magician telling you how he pulled off the trick of how he made Freddy Krueger work, how he made Pluto work, how he made Krug from Last House on the Left work, People Under the Stairs, Horace Pinker from Shocker, etc. He was one of those guys that he didn't just had throwaway characters. He tried to make everything work in a perfect cohesive unit, and I think that was the power of Wes Craven. He didn't dwell on the little things. He kind of tried to make everybody and everything important, and that's why he was such a great filmmaker. And I think we'll all three of us will miss him forever. And this is why we do things like this, to talk about him.
Yep.
Yeah, and his work will live on, and his work has continued to be classics, and they will continue to be classics because they're just, even looking back on the Last House, on the original Last House, that movie does get a very split reaction now. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people also some people think it's just okay. I enjoy it because if you look at Last House, and even when it come to the budget when they were working with it, Wes Craven still tried to give it this gritty feel and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just Wes Craven's a legend in horror, and he is going to be greatly missed. His work will live on because when you watch his films, they're just so well made, and I think that's a big reason, and also because Wes Craven was a big part of horror. Some of the movies that he released were really big parts of horror. And he will be missed.
Yeah, he was I think he's the only director that moved horror along in not only one decade but three. I mean, Last House on the Left is the grindhouse rape revenge movie. It is the Citizen Kane of those movies. I know. I think you like I Spit on Your Grave more, right?
Yeah. But Last House preceded it, right?
Yeah, I'm saying like everybody, when you think the rape revenge grindhouse gritty classic, that's what you think.
Yeah, Last House and the Left.
Same thing with Elm Street. It was you had Friday the 13th, you had Halloween, these new takes on a slasher movie, and then Wes Craven said, "This is my take on it. I'm going to add the dream element.
Yeah.
These kids, okay, cool. That's cute that Janet Leigh's in the shower. That's cute that Jamie Lee's in a house. It's cute that Adrian King's By the Lake, but I'm going to make it a place that they can't escape at all. You can't drive out of a dream. You can't run out of a dream. You're in the dream. And then with Scream, he just made a genre that was so dead and so tired and so laughed at and not making any money or any sense. I mean, nobody cared about the genre anymore. I'm thinking from like 1990 to 1996. You can name, there's always that guy, oh, I like this from 1994. Yeah, sure. But that was the deadest the genre ever got, even more so than now. I mean, you have movies like The Witch and It Follows. They get released now. But, I mean, Scream just – you heard people talking about movies that, you know, we watched growing up. They talk about Halloween a lot. They talk about Prom Night. They talk about The Howling. You know, movies like that. And that's why I think he was just always one step ahead of the curve. He was like, okay, this is going to be popular then. I'm going to make the prototype. He wasn't afraid to experiment, as you would see with The People Under the Stairs and Shocker. He wasn't afraid to make that experimental film. And I think that's why he was such a genius. He would say, okay, you know what? Here's my classic, but I'm going to try to make this in between. Maybe this will become a big deal. And that's why he was such a great, influential director, though. Do you want to get into Last House, though? We'll start the retrospective.
First movie, guys, we're talking about is a film from 1972. This is the first film that Wes Craven had made, the original Last House on the Left. And Last House, in my opinion, is, like I said, a lot of people have said it hasn't aged well. And I do have problems with it. I really do. There's a couple things I got to talk about that, you know, just I don't know. I mean, I do have problems with Last House, but watching the features and especially listening to that fun commentary. If you guys get that DVD, it's
Actually,
I don't remember. Yeah, that DVD, that commentary is so fun to listen to. The cast was having so much fun during that I love that commentary. I think that was.
I'll listen to it when I get a chance. I've never heard it.
Oh yeah, it's great, man. It's got some really good stuff on the cast. Like they're just having fun, you know. And I love that about commentaries when they're just having fun. But Last House, in my opinion, you know, this was the first film that really showed violence in a very realistic way, like this. And you know, before this, you had, of course, this isn't like the first violent movie. There was Clockwork Orange, I think, came out in 1971. Psycho, of course, showed, you know, somebody getting stabbed in the shower, and that the time was just, you know, extremely shocking. And you know, there were a couple movies that came out before Last House that were, you know, gory and bloody. But Last House really shocked, you know, it shocked a lot of, you know, because when it came out in theaters, a lot of people were shocked. People were fainting. You know, there was, you know, stories that people were throwing up, and you know, it was just this, you know, worldwide thing that was going on at the time. And I think that Last House is a very good, you know, comment. Like I think like the whole thing with, you know, post Vietnam and, you know, how gritty and real Last House feels. I think Wes Craven captured that very well, because when you watch Last House, it's extremely gritty and realistic. And the acting was pretty decent, especially from the psychopaths, you know, David Hess. I also enjoyed the guy who played Weasel and Junior, and the other girl. I just want to say Sadie, but I don't know if that's her name. But it's Sadie. All right, I just wasn't sure. I was like, I want to say Sadie, but I don't want to mess it up and fail that. But they were all done well. They were casted well, and they all delivered a, you know, phenomenal performance. I think they all did a good job. And even the two lead girls, you know, the lead character and her friend, Phyllis, I can't remember, the Mary Collingwood, I think was her name, was lead. But they did a decent job as well. And the movie is well shot. I think it does have a good score. I love that song. And the road leads to nowhere. I love that song. I love some of the songs in the movie, like that sort of soft guitar song that plays, and You know, it's like wheels turning, stuff like that. That's a good song as well.
Wow.
Some of the music I didn't like, especially the song that plays when they're in the car and they're driving.
Everybody hates that song.
I'm sorry. I know what they were trying to do from watching the features. They were trying to do this whole reverse thing where they show a disturbing thing and have this wacky music playing. It's supposed to play with your emotions, but I don't know. It just felt very weird. It just didn't fit the scene. I was just like, okay, this is really, really strange music.
It's off. It's off. It's like
it's very off.
Playing through
very off. But you know, you got that. You got some silly music in there, and you got these scenes that involve the sheriff and the deputy, and you know, I don't like the scenes. They're just not my kind of comedy. They're just not that funny. I didn't think they were. I mean, the one guy would go on to be in Rambo: First Blood Part 2, but the sheriff, yeah, he'd go on to be in a lot of movies actually after this. But the sheriff, I don't know about his acting, you know, yeah. But those scenes were really goofy, and you know, I don't know. I just didn't really care for I just didn't really like those scenes. They were just not. In my opinion, if you would have taken out some of the music and you would have taken out those scenes involving the sheriff and the deputy, this would be like a perfect horror movie because all the rest of the scenes I love because they're really intense, they're really real, and it's just those scenes though, like those scenes involving the sheriff and the deputy. It's just like and the ending revenge is decent. It's decent. I mean, you got of course the dad taking a chainsaw and chainsawing Krug, and you know you got a lot of cool stuff going on. But yeah, I enjoy Last House, so you guys can give your thoughts on it if you guys want.
Yeah, Last House. I think it, just like you said, it's a phenomenal movie. One of my favorite parts of like how you were going on about the social commentary of it is that prior to that film, like everything from the Adam West Batman to the most like serious crime drama taught you violence is okay if someone attacked me first. You kill my daughter, it's okay for me to kill you and your entire country, and I'm justified. And Last House came along, and the parents are like, okay, you killed my daughter and her friend, we're gonna kill you. And it ends with them still being heartbroken, being disgusted with themselves. Great, you guys are dead, but my daughter's still gone, so what the fuck did I accomplish? And yeah. I think that part, while I prefer I Spit on Your Grave, because they are both rape revenge movies, I think what the charm of Last House, or the part that makes it different, is that I Spit on Your Grave is just the person getting revenge for themselves, whereas The Last House is I'm getting revenge for my daughter, for someone I love. And I think that's almost a bit more of an emotional tether to the film. And if you want to talk about terrifying kills, like, you know, getting stabbed in the shower or getting shish kebabbed while you're fucking someone, whatever. I mean, it sucks because I got killed, but you know what? It's a knife. I'll get over it. Fucking that scene where the wife claims to give that guy a blowjob and just bites his dick off.
Yeah.
If that's hard not in one
that was really
most
you know,
people kill. I don't know
cringe.
what you've gone through.
Again though, it was actually in I Spit on Your Grave. That's the scene where she's kind of in the tub with him,
and then castrates.
Yeah, and he doesn't even do it. He just goes, "Ooh, that was a little pinch," and then he just starts screaming. That like that to me, anything with that, because I'm a guy, freaks me the hell out. And that's like one of those things that, I mean, I think getting it bitten off would be scarier, but it's done effective in both movies. But I know. What are your problems? Do you have problems with the movie or anything? Like you said, he had a few problems. Because I'm gonna praise it. Because honestly, to me, on this list, it's probably one of two or three movies that I actually have always found kinda to be perfect. But although I do get the nitpicks with this one.
Yeah, I mean, if I was to call anything out, I think I'd agree with you that all the cop scenes, it's kind of unnecessary. I mean, depending on when I would see it, during like which stages of my life, sometimes I would find it funny. Other times I'm like, just why is it here, kind of thing. But I mean, like I could get over that part. I guess that's my one problem, but I get over it.
What about the music? Do you like the music?
Like, again, I pretty much agree with everything you said. Like that really soft, slow guitar songs that happen throughout it, I think fit perfectly. I think it's right after they kill the girls and some song is playing and they're just like picking the leaves off their bloody hands and stuff.
That's the best part.
That's a beautiful scene.
Yeah, that's an emotional. It's a very emotional scene because it's like right after he's done. I think it was after he'd done raped the lead girl. When she gets up, that's just like a scene where you realize even the killers are disgusted with themselves what they did, and that was a well done scene. Like bravo to that scene. That scene was just so well done, just showing how even the killers were just like, oh my god, what would we just do? Very effective scene.
Absolutely, best. It's to me, it's the best scene in the movie. But when I think about Last House, I understand all the gripes it gets, and I do understand how people say it hasn't aged well because I've shown the movie to a few of my friends that aren't like horror movie guys like we are. Like, I mean, we live, breathe, and die horror movies. We love watching horror movies. It's a big thing in our lives. But I showed it to them, and they partially got it, they partially didn't. They like you said, there's some things that are off for them. But I saw the movie actually, I think I was about 9 years old when I saw this movie. I think I rented it from a Hollywood video store. And I was under the impression that it was a ghost film because that title kind of, Last House on the Left. It sounds like a Vincent Price, like 1953. Yeah. It doesn't sound like what it is. So I had the wrong, and the tagline. It's also, in the long run, a movie that was marketed brilliantly by Sean S. Cunningham, who was going to bring us Friday the 13th. It's only a movie. It's only a movie, and the trailers, and it really got you in the mood. But when I turned it on, I always found it to be a really powerful movie for the age that it was and how old that it is and how much they had no money. I mean, they had no budget for this thing.
Exactly.
And I think they made David Hess's crew. That character is just, it's the sinister character. I mean, and it's also where they got Freddy Krueger from. They took Krug and added the ER apparently. So I always thought that was really cool that they did that. But to me, it's a movie that it really begs the question on what you would do in that situation, and it really makes you think about how you would handle it and what you would go through to protect the ones you love, like you were saying. And I think that human drive really got to me. Like, I always thought about it. Like, what if somebody killed somebody that I love? What would I do? Would I do these things? And there's also a lot of impactful scenes. I love the scene where they're gonna take the hammer to that guy's like an ice pick. They're gonna break the guy's teeth. Like, you don't see anything, but it's the notion. It's almost like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You don't see Leatherface hang her on the hook. You see it in your brain. You see it in your imagination, and it's like, oh my god, But you never see blood. You never see an effect. It's just, she's sitting on some kind of prosthetic. She's not. It's all. You fill in the blanks of your mind, and I think that's the beauty of horror. You don't see during the rape scene. It's not like I Spit on Your Grave where they show you the whole thing. It's just it's implied. It's enough to get the image across, and I think a thing about this movie that everybody says they went for it. They went for it. Yes, but they didn't go over the top. They didn't. It wasn't to the point where you realize the nightmare was a movie. It was to the point where you realize that this is one screwed up nightmare. It was just one of those perfect movies to me. It's just, I love it. I always have. I love that the son had some kind of a drug addiction, and he's torn to what he's going to do. She helped him get out, And I just think everybody, like you said, I think David Hess gave the performance of his career a performance that they wanted him to do in movies like, what's the Deodato one from 1980? Don't Go in the House.
Yeah, there's a lot of movies that came out with the same sort of title. It's the House by the Cemetery, I think is what it's called.
I know House by the Cemetery is Lucio Fulci. I think it's House by the...
Yeah, I get that. I get these titles mixed up so much because there's House at the Edge of the Park. That's what it's called, House Edge of the Park. And there's that. There's also House at the end of the cemetery, right? Or House by the Cemetery, or what? I don't remember the title that much.
Yeah, you got House on Haunted Hill. You got House of the Thousand.
There's a movie just called House. Miner's House.
Oh,
There's the
yeah.
one from
There was a newer horror film that came out, House at the End of the Street, I think. The
yeah, with
newest,
Jennifer
one of the
Lawrence.
newer ones.
Oh yeah, that was like
Yeah,
2013.
they love using house and horror titles, but I honestly I just think it was one of those. It was lightning in a bottle. To me, this movie, when I watch it, it's the only other movie that almost gives me the Texas Chainsaw Massacre feeling, as though they weren't too far apart. I think Texas Chainsaw was made 2 years after this. It's lightning in a bottle. It's something he fell into. I don't think it was something that he said, we're going to just go nuts with this. Because you don't see much. You really don't. And it's one of those movies. And I actually really do like Wait for the Rain. I really do like the acting in it. And I think, yeah, are the cops needless? Sure. Is some of the music off? Sure, I agree. But I think it's one of two movies that really gets me in that feeling of, wow, this is powerful. And I think that it's one of his top 3 movies of all time. Easily.
Yeah, it's definitely a favorite of mine too. I agree with you, man. It's when I looked at this movie and seen the interviews and heard what they had, you know, the small budget they had to work with. They pretty much shot this movie like many people have said in Sean S. Cunningham's backyard, pretty much. And they were shooting it out in the woods. From what I've heard, the camera guy didn't really have that much experience, which was a big shocker for me because I was like, this movie is extremely well shot. I don't know, it just like the I know it's very, when you look at it's not like like an advanced shot movie, but I think it's just when they're out in the woods, especially during the chase scenes, when you just get those simple pans of them just running, or the simple 70s zoom in and then zoom back out or something like that. They were just well done. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the movie, and I was always shocked to hear that like the camera guy didn't have that much experience. I was like, what? I mean, to me, this movie was actually had some decent visuals. And it always shocked me when I heard that, like, in interviews, like, well, because the guy who played Weasel helped out in a lot of themes. I mean, he, showed them how to make guts out of a condom and you put sand and blood in there. He showed them how to do that. He showed them how to do the scene where she's acting like she's giving the guy a blowjob and then she bites, his penis off. But he showed them how to do that. He showed them how to fight without getting hurt. He showed them a lot of things, and then he mentioned about the camera guy, and then he mentioned about how he helped him, make sure that he was, going along.
He also hates the movie. He thinks
I always wondered why he hated it so much, but I really enjoy it. I think it's definitely a classic. I can honestly say that Last House on the Left is a classic. I know that this, like I said, it's just a movie that does get, like a very split down the middle stuff. I mean, I've heard so many different opinions on this movie. It's one of those movies where I've seen so many reviews and so many people give different, opinions and thoughts on this movie, but I love this movie. I think it's a great movie. The cop scenes and a couple of the songs, like, it was unnecessary, but, overall, pretty good movie. Actually, a really good movie. And I enjoy it. I think it's really realistic. The social commentary is definitely there. It's gritty. It's realistic. The gore, not gore. Well, I mean, you could say there's blood and stuff, but there's maybe a couple scenes that involve maybe just a little bit of gore. But, like you said, it was mainly just, implied. You don't see it. It's what you don't see is what scares you.
Exactly.
And that's a great point about Chainsaw, is that in that movie that was handled well as well. And it just shows that you don't got to have blood and guts to make it a horror movie. You can have brutal scenes but not show it, and it can still be effective. And I really did enjoy that about this movie. And just overall, I really enjoyed Last House. I think it's a little bit underrated because it does get a lot of people who say that it's aged and stuff. So I think it's a little bit underrated, but it does have a cult following. There's, still people defending this movie, and that's really cool. I'm a really big fan of Last House, and it's well made. I think it's a really well made movie. Next movie we move on to is Well, I mean, should we do his non-horror movies as well? Because he did a lot of TV stuff too.
Yeah, let's skip over the porn and the TV.
Yeah. let's just because I didn't see those.
Yeah.
Let's
Let's also do ratings on each one. Like out of
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. My bad. I would give Last House, quite possibly a 5-star rating.
out of 5.
Maybe a 4.5. I don't know. It's just those cop scenes, man. Like that and the music, maybe a 4.7 or 8. It's so close to a 5, but with those things, I mean, it did take it down a little bit. No, honestly, I keep bouncing back and forth, but it's just hard, man, because I think about those scenes, but then I'm like, I really do love the movie, but I'll give it about 4.9, almost 5 stars. It's almost there, but those few scenes in there that kind of brought down a little bit. For me.
I would just give it a 5 out of 5. To me, it's a landmark in horror. It's one of the only movies I know of that really captured lightning in a bottle, and I think it's just powerful. I know it hasn't aged well, as well as Scream has. I feel like Scream doesn't get as good a rep anymore as it did when it came out, but I would say 5 out of 5. It's probably one of the only movies on this list I'm going to give a 5 out of 5.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. Not even because of all the problems I have. I think just because it's not in the pool of horror, it's not a film that I go to that often.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I've seen it or even really thought of it in like 2 or 3 years. I think it was the last time I saw it. So just for that reason, and just because of the next few we're gonna talk about that I have a lot higher, I'll give it a 4.
Okay, cool.
All right, well, that's Last House on the Left from 1972. The next movie we'll be talking about is another classic that I love, The Hills Have Eyes, which came out in 1977. Now, once again, directed, of course, they're all directed by Wes Craven, but I do know that he had somebody involved in the movie of the writing, I do think. And, I think he had Sean S. Cunningham with Last House, and then he had, I can't remember his name.
His name's Peter Locke.
Peter Locke was involved in The Hills of Eyes. Yeah, Peter Locke. And The Hills of Eyes is a movie that I actually, for the longest time, I didn't watch it. Well, I mean, I watched it once or twice. I can't remember. But I watched it a long time ago. And I didn't see it for the longest time. Like, I watched it maybe 2 months ago for, well, I know the before 2 months ago, it was probably a good 4 or 5 years since I've seen The Hills of Eyes original. And I sat down a couple weeks ago, and the first time I watched The Hills of Eyes, I thought it was just eh. But I don't know if it's because I was younger and I didn't really look at the movie from just looking at it and paying attention to the details and stuff like that. But I watched it a couple months ago, and I really loved it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very good horror film. It's like you guys said, it discusses, again, social commentary on these deformed people out in this out in the hills, and it's definitely a creepy idea when you think about it. Because if you think about it, just imagine going somewhere like that, and there are people living in these woods, and the thing that I think this movie touched on a little bit more than the remake was them sort of just getting ready for the attack. The remake was just like the attack happens, lots of gore, lots of violence, and I love the remake too. I love the remake Hills of Eyes, but in this movie, I like the fact that they build that up. They build that scene up to the trailer so much because you're just seeing these people, look down from the hills through binoculars and stuff like that, and you're hearing them talk on radios, and you're just like, what the freak is up? And then they finally attack, and I still think it's pretty brutal. Some people say that it's tame compared to today's standards, but the attack, if you think about it, it is brutal. I mean, they burn the dad. They put him on that, they hang him up like this, like a scarecrow, I think, and they burn him. The one guy, not Jupiter, the other guy, rapes the daughter. It's more of an implied rape scene. It's not really shown, But I still think it's a very effective scene because they build it up so much. They were showing just that, you know, I don't know if you say they're mutants in this one. It's more of just people kind of deformed, you know, just building it up really good because it showed them looking down on them in the radios. It was built up really good. But yeah, Hills of Eyes, I really like it. I really enjoy it. I think it's well shot, well acted. I enjoyed the cast. You know, some of the effects were especially some of the blood scenes. I don't know, they just, you know, especially whenever the one character gets stabbed in the leg, the blood looked kind of really bright red, but you know, you know, the effects were pretty decent, I can say. And yeah, I mean, I still consider to say it's a classic. I can still say The Hills of Eyes is a classic.
Yeah, for me, it was.
Yeah, and I really do enjoy it.
Yeah, for me, it was a film that it really, like, kind of like you, it took me a while to get into it. Like, I know you, like, this man, he's pretty much introduced me to everything horror related.
Just like everybody else that I'm friends with around here. Jesus Christ. Even people that don't like horror movies, I'm like, let's just sit down and watch The Last House on the Left. They're just like, oh my God. 10 minutes in.
Said it, man. What can I say?
I guess so.
But, so yeah, like you, right off the bat, were really into it. And the first time you loaned it to me, the first time I watched it, I turned it off halfway through. Just, I think I was like 12 or 13, and I just turned it off halfway through. I wasn't feeling it. Then I came back to it like a year later and was in love with it. One, I love how, for like the mutants, just like the cannibals, the guys that attack, that's all how they look. They found real people that are like that. I respected that.
Michael Berryman.
Yeah. I loved just like the insanity of them. Like towards the very end, one of the guys is just screaming his head off at like a corpse of like his brother or something, just going like, "I'll eat the hearts of your kids."
Oh yeah, he cuts like a promo, like a wrestling promo to the camera.
Yeah, up close on his face, and he's just yelling at the camera.
Yeah, they break the fourth wall, kind of. It's like, it's awesome, and the guy hits the thing on his face, and I always thought that was a cool prosthetic. Like I always thought that was it looked real. Like even like I know what you're saying about the blood. Like it kind of has Dawn of the Dead syndrome with that. Like it's really bright. But again, I'm such a Dawn of the Dead mark that it really doesn't bother me.
I don't know if I would say though, like, I don't know, maybe because Dawn of the Dead and many people, even George Romero said he was going for this look, had a comic book feel to it. And I don't know, maybe the blood, I don't know, it didn't bother me as much in Dawn because, you know, the zombies are all painted gray, but it worked. It just worked because of the tone of the movie. But here, I was like, it's like really bright reds.
Totally agree. You're right. I kind of as another. This was one where I got this movie at a video store. It was going out of business. I don't think it wasn't a Hollywood Video or Blockbuster. It was like just go in and buy the movie. And I picked this movie up, and I think it's like a Divomax. It's like a weird edition. I don't know where it is on my DVD rack as of right now, but I just always, again, I'm a big gritty grindhouse guy, and this movie right off the bat, I mean, the first thing you see is the gas station, the hills, and the big, I love the text used, the Peter Locke, and the kind of, that font, it's just great. And it kind of, like, it almost recaptures some of that magic that Last House had of the atmosphere. These two movies are for atmosphere. I think Craven's best. I don't think he ever captured an atmosphere other than maybe Nightmare quite like this, because it just puts you in this kind of mood. It sets a mood. It sets a tone. And I always here's my thing. My only complaint with the movie that nobody really ever mentions. I think some of the family members are annoying. I think the woman who plays the mom, if you ever rewatch the movie, she is awful. I think the actress's name is Virginia Vincent. Absolute awful actress. I thought she was terrible. The blonde girl she screams throughout the whole movie, "Don't leave it with me, Bobby!" You know, like she can get annoying.
Yeah, I will agree with that. I will definitely say that her character, when she's calm, she's not annoying, but when she starts to freak out, and there's a lot of horror movies out there where, you know, you're like, okay, this lead actress, she's doing pretty good in the horror movie and stuff like that. She's a pretty good heroine. And then, pretty much when she starts screaming and stuff, I'm just like, okay, this is really annoying.
Yeah.
I just noticed that with a lot of horror movies out there that do that. They just have
Those-
good at first, and then when they start screaming and freaking out, it's just
Yeah, she was good to look at, but after she started screaming, I was like, "Holy shit, man!"
Yeah.
And you know, like what they did do again, and this is where you have to give Wes the plus. Everybody he kind of the people in the hills killed. The mother, who I could not stand. The father, who was an okay character. He could have been like one of those guys that had a cool redemption, but not like. And then the one with the baby. Those three characters were honestly the least interesting of the movie. I mean, the three that they let living are easily the three that I like the most, even though the girl can get annoying. But I think Bobby, and I always forget the guy's name, but he looks like my father, weirdly enough. I always say, Dad, you starred in The Hills Have Eyes. And it's funny that Rambo Rat always says that he starred in the sequel because he looks like the guy from not the sequel.
Yeah, Doug from the remake, which he does really though. He really does look like Doug from Hills Have Eyes.
He does.
He really does too.
My dad. I mean, my dad, when he was around that age, looked just like the guy in the original too. It's a weird look. Like I always show my dad, I'm like, dude, are you sure you didn't star in this movie? I've tried to like unravel the secret, but it's not coming together for me as I hoped. But to me, it's the atmosphere. I think the two dogs were really good. He sees one gutted, and it's for a split second. Again, you don't see a lot of it. This time you see it, but it's like split second, a snap. And you're like, you get the implication of, holy shit, they gutted this dog. They're probably eating this dog. What are they going to do to the baby? You know, and I liked the Ruby character. I liked that she was kind of rebelling against her own flesh and blood because she was sick of being, she was sick of living this life of torment and all these things. And she wanted out. You know, she's asking the guy in the gas station, I want out. And he's like, you smell like a horse and shit. Like that guy was pretty funny too. That guy gets no credit. He was funny and stuff like that. Another thing too with this movie that nobody ever mentions is the origin of the people in the hills. How he says that like she gave birth to Papa Jupiter, and he killed her and he burned the house down and he hit him with an iron, and he went out, found himself a whore, and then that's how these people originated. Like, nobody ever mentions that. And I always thought that was kind of a weird origin story, to be honest with you. Like most people just kind of accept it as, okay, they're just people in the hills, which they are. But they do take time to explain how this came to be, and I always found that a little silly. Those are like my only two nitpicks. Some of the characters are a little meh for me, and the origin is a little meh for me. But the atmosphere, the final sequence with Papa Juke getting they put their own mother as bait. They taught her their own dead mother who'd been shot in the chest. Like, again, Wes Craven, he taps into, would you do that to your mother? And it's just like, Jesus Christ, would you do that to your survival? And it's a lot of things I feel like a lot of people don't touch on with this specific movie that are in there. And I think those things really do pack a punch sometimes. And I think that's one of them. And I love that, he gets his baby back and he, stabs that guy, and it just turns to red and then credits. Just a really cool, original kind of movie. It wasn't, I don't think it was lightning in a bottle. I do think he captured that atmosphere for the second and last time. I do. When I watched Last House and Hills Have Eyes, it's almost like a perfect grindhouse, gritty double feature because they're so atmospheric. And I think that's the highlight of the Hills Have Eyes, the atmosphere.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, with me, the atmosphere again, I agree with you, man. Like, the atmosphere was a big theme in this movie that I really loved. Like, it was just captured so well, shot very, very well. I love the opening of the movie. You see like the hill, and you see the sort of silhouette of the hills. It was a beautiful shot. And I like the idea of the the origin was definitely more basic in the remake. It was just, radiation, made these people mutants, and but in this one it was definitely a little bit more complex. It was just like, so I don't know. I mean, the origin story in this one, I I don't really think I would say that I hate it or despise it, but like I do agree with you. It is a little weird origin story, but but I don't know. Like I really got sucked into the atmosphere.
Same.
And even though I guess you guys, even though I guess like people have said like the night scenes aren't lit that well, I think that in this movie, it was actually a good thing because you could still make out things. I could still see things in the movie. But I thought the night scenes were creepy. Like they just had a great atmosphere. I love the night scenes in this movie. They were just so well done, in my opinion. And people have mentioned that it was so dark you couldn't see what was going on, and I was like, I watched it and I could see what was going on, and I thought it was just very well shot. The night scenes, like they looked very eerie because they're out in the middle of the desert. This big wide open area, and at nighttime it looks creepy as crap, man. It looks really good. And the idea of just going out on a vacation and taking a little detour and these people getting trapped out into the desert. Although I do get when the Air Force, the whole Air Force thing is used more in this movie. They mention that a little bit more in the remake does, of there being an Air Force base and stuff. When the air thing flies by, when the jet flies by, I do get it, it's loud, but I don't get they freak out and just and wreck. I mean, it's just a little nitpick. But,
Yeah, it was silly how they forced them off the road. That was done better in the remake.
I thought it was better. Yeah, better in the remake where they had the spikes out in the road and it just hit it, and then they got into a car. And that was just it made more sense, and it was more basic like that. And I really enjoyed that. But within this movie, I get it. It's a jet and everything, and yeah, maybe it is very close, but I was thinking, I was like, would it be that loud to the point where they're freaking out and they just wreck? I'm like, okay.
It probably not.
I don't know about that, but it's well shot. The night scenes are great. I love the idea behind the movie. Acting for the most part is pretty decent. Decent effects for its time, decent. But I think it's still I consider it to be a classic. And yeah, I really enjoy Hills of Ice.
What would you give it in a rating?
I'd give it about a 3 or 4, maybe a 3 out of 5. Not even that, maybe a 3.5. Honestly, I know I'm giving it 3 points or like points in this, but maybe about a 3.5 out of 5. It's pretty good. I would still consider it to be a classic, but there's a few problems, involving some of the effects. I've dated a little bit, but I really do love some of the stuff in this movie. The acting is pretty decent. I love the night scenes. I love the atmosphere. It's very well shot, and yeah, probably a 3.5 out of 5. I know it's weird saying it's a classic, giving a 3.5, but it's weird. Like I consider it to be classic, but I wouldn't give it like a 5 out of 5. I don't think it's a flawless, no problem film. There's a couple problems, but I do think it's well shot. I do think it's well made, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, I would probably give it like a 4.5 out of 5, because to me it is a great movie. It is a classic. It's just this close to, for me, it's like it's not perfect. It's not,
same here.
It's not like Last House. It's just and a lot of people will flip with like what we're saying, because I would say Last House is more of a perfect movie than this is. But I think most people nowadays would say this is the more perfect movie. I don't really agree. I think there's certain things that get completely overlooked that we touched on. I mean, some of the actors, some of the characters, the way they get forced off the road, the origin. These aren't bad things. These are just nitpicks that make it not an unperfect movie. I'd say 4.5 out of 5. Everything else I love. I think it's just such a great atmospheric piece. And I actually do go back and rewatch this one a lot more than, let's say, a Shocker or People Under the Stairs, for that matter. What would you give it?
I'd give it about a
Steve can actually join the call. I'm actually going to invite Steve to the call right now.
All right, cool.
He said he's going to be able to make it, so cool. It's going to be. I'm just going to ask him quickly, his thoughts on Wes Craven and stuff like that. But yeah, there he is.
All right.
Okay.
What's up, buddies?
Hey, what's up?
Am I on with the John Grande?
You are, brother. I can't see you, but you are.
Okay, I have no idea what I'm doing right here. Give me a second. There we go. Oh, give me a minute.
I know it's so hard to work these things. Like the broadcasting, it always takes a little bit to set up the broadcast.
It took us like goddamn 15 minutes to figure out. I installed it like 7 times on my computer, and it was like we were like, let's try something else, and then we opened it up in another, and it finally worked.
Yeah.
So, an experiment in fear.
Right. Oh, you're a little sideways, man. But
Oh, shoot.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, I guess that's the best I can do. Well, I'm on with my buddy Nate. What's up, Nate?
Hey, what's up? Not much, man. Just doing a retrospective on Wes Craven, and we're on Hills of Eyes right now. But you can like give your quick thoughts on Wes Craven as a director, and and your quick thoughts on Last House and Hills of Eyes we went to. We're still on Hills, so you can just describe your opinion on Hills of Eyes we went to too.
That's fine. I'll probably only pop in for about 10-15 minutes. I've got an early morning tomorrow, but I wanted to go ahead and pop in and hang out with good buddy Nate. So, and also I wanted to let you know, John Grande. I want to let you know I was just listening to, re-listening to Dead Pit's last show where you called in, and I want to let you know, buddy, you're one of my favorite Dead Pit callers. So.
Thank you so much. I didn't even know that I had people that knew me from the Dead Pit call-ins, but I'm so flattered to hear that. I missed that show, man, so much. To me, they were the best thing in the genre for the past 10 years, without any question.
Heck yeah.
I agree.
As far as my opinions on Hills Have Eyes, I'm not a huge fan of it. I've maybe watched the movie once or twice, and I think it's worth watching a third time to give another try at it. Because,
it's the same thing with me, man. I watched the first time, I really couldn't. I don't know. The first time I watched it, maybe because like I said, maybe because I was younger, but I couldn't get into. But after I watched it a couple other times, and then watched it a couple months ago, then I really got into it.
Oh yeah. That's. I guess that could be the way that I am, but I'm not really sure. At this point, I don't know. Back when I last watched it, I wasn't really a big fan of the grindhouse type stuff, and I'm getting a little bit more into that stuff. And I have very specific thoughts on morality and stuff like that. But at the same time, I'm kind of a fast and loose guy. I play fast and loose with the idea of what is acceptable in movies and what isn't. And Last House is just a movie that's I don't know. I think the biggest sin of Last House is that it's a little bit loosely thrown together personally for me, but that's just my thoughts initially, and I'd probably watch it again and probably have changed thoughts. If you guys haven't talked about The Fireworks Woman, oh man, that's Wes's best movie.
We've actually skipped it. It's like, we'll stick to the main stuff.
Let's not stick to his porn career, his sordid porn career.
Abe Snake, my favorite director.
Yeah. Abe Snake. Okay, now, as far as Hills Have Eyes are concerned, Hills Have Eyes was, I think that was one of my first Wes Craven movies. First one was obviously Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, everybody got into Wes Craven when they saw Nightmare on Elm Street. So, I mean, I'm not any original like that. But, I saw Hills Have Eyes a little bit after Nightmare, and so that was sort of an early Wes movie for me, and I've always been a big fan of it. It's not a masterpiece. It has its flaws. Special effects aren't fantastic, but it's got that great 70s grindhouse feel. You're going to watch that movie and you're going to want to be in a grindhouse, or you're going to want to be in a drive-in watching it. And I don't know, it's just one of those movies that's great for atmosphere. It's creepy as heck, and it's got some genuine good moments of scares and Wes's political and social philosophy coming through in there as well. So I really enjoy Hills Have Eyes. I wouldn't say it's his best movie. I'd maybe put it in his top 5, but certainly I can't say that it's his greatest. But it is a rather good accomplishment in horror filmmaking.
Yeah, I definitely agree, man. Yeah, because like with Wes Craven, as time went along, sort of started making different kinds of horror films. At the beginning it was the grindhouse sort of horror films, very realistic and gritty horror films. And then as we got into the 80s, Nightmare on Elm Street, Shocker, Serpent and the Rainbow. 90s, of course, we got to. Steve's probably favorite horror film. Well, I think it is your favorite horror film franchise, Scream, which totally.
I'm a huge fan of Scream, but I can't say it's my
Yeah.
absolute favorite. I had some awakenings, let us say, about other horror films that I do believe are far superior to Scream. But I will say that Scream is one of my favorite movies still, and it's definitely my favorite Wes movie. So.
Yeah, I love Scream. I even love Scream 3 and 4. Like 3 gets so much hate. Like we'll get to Scream 3, but Scream 2's but I really do enjoy Scream. Like I'm a really big fan of it. But as time went along, Wes Craven sort of changed the way that
He knew how to reinvent himself. He knew how to
exactly.
himself better than Carpenter, better than Romero. I mean, but Romero's my guy. I'm a huge Romero guy. I mean, I love all the Dead movies. I love Creepshow. I love Martin. Martin's one of the most underrated horror movies. It never gets its due. But even more so than those two guys, Carpenter and Romero, Craven knew how to. He realized when things were getting stale. He realized that, okay, they've seen this Friday the 13th. They've seen the sequels now. They've seen Michael Myers. They've seen all these things. Let me throw my spin on it. And that's when he invented Freddy Krueger and the Dreamlike Master and all these things. He took his own spin on something that was already made popular. And that's what was so good about him. And also with Scream, I mean, horror movies in general were just lame at this point. Horror movies were dying almost. And that's when he stepped in and said, okay, I'm going to parody it, and I'm going to make a great kick-ass movie at the same time. And that's exactly what he did. The guy's an absolute innovator, an absolute amazing filmmaker. We all love Wes.
Oh, definitely true.
Yeah.
And I definitely agree with the idea of Wes reinventing himself. The idea I think that we should have about Wes is he's sort of like the David Bowie of horror movies. He just constantly reinvents his style. And I think something that people don't give Wes enough credit for was he was a shrewd as heck. Like you said, he knew exactly when we were going to be in. He knew people were going to want certain things from him. And I think he was one of the guys who really tried as hard as he could to listen to the fans. Whereas, I mean, we love Carpenter because Carpenter marches to his own beat. He sort of sticks to exactly what he wants to do and doesn't like to do a lot of compromises. Wes was a little bit more easy to compromise, but in that way, he sort of showed through the fact that he was a shrewd as heck businessman who was ready to do whatever he could to make the movie that he wanted to get made.
I definitely agree with that. With Wes Craven, I mean, and I also mentioned this a little bit earlier, but with his interviews and stuff, he seemed like, and I know I've said this probably 3 or 4 times now, but I always thought that whenever he did his interviews and commentaries, he seemed like a genius about what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. He wanted to make these characters that were memorable and wanted to make this, not just your average horror film. He wanted to make it something that would stick around and people would remember for a long time. And I think, with his interviews and stuff, he's just a brilliant filmmaker. I really, the word that comes to my mind when I think of Wes Craven as a director is genius. And and brilliant. I just think when you listen to his interview and stuff, he's just very smart about what he talks about, and he's a genius. I mean, I know I said that 5 times, but you know, I always say that. I just think he's a genius of horror. That's just how I think.
It's the truth. Preach the truth, brother.
But yeah, Hills of Eyes, pretty good. I think it's pretty good. I would still consider it to be a classic, but I would still say it does have problems. But I can still say it's in the category of classic.
So what's up next?
Oh yeah. Well, we have Deadly Blessing, which came out in 1981. I haven't seen this movie. I've heard about it. It gets a 5.5 on IMDb. I've heard, a lot of things about this movie. I'm not sure a lot about Deadly Blessing. This is one of those Wes Craven movies that I'm not really sure a lot about. I know Swamp Thing. I know a little bit about that. I know a little bit about, a couple of other movies I haven't seen yet. But with Deadly Blessing, I've heard some people have problems with it. But I don't know. I mean, I really don't know, a lot about this movie. But yeah, so you guys might be able to give a little bit more details behind it because I haven't seen it yet. But I have heard that some people, I've heard some people say they didn't like it. But yeah, I don't know too much about Deadly Blessing. But you guys can give you guys' opinions on it if you guys want.
I mean, I've seen it, but if you haven't, I mean, have you seen it, Steve?
Oh yeah, I've seen it.
What do you think of it?
I'm a fan, kind of, I guess. I like a lot of the movie, but it's definitely not what you'd call one of Wes's masterpieces. It's I think one of the movies that he really wants to put his particular opinions on religion forward. It's one of the first movies where he really does that as well. I mean, I guess you could talk about Hills Have Eyes, and he would have the Father up on the cross side. But Wes really comes through with his sort of criticism of what do you call it? Fundamentalist Christianity, and in particular, the Mennonites. In here, he totally rips on them, and perhaps unjustly, perhaps justly. That's not really for us to judge. I don't think. I think what it is here to judge is the fact that I think he wanted to do more with the movie than he probably could with the budget constraints and stuff like that. The big didn't quite want to know exactly what it wants to be, and my biggest problem with the movie is that crazy weird ending that just comes out of nowhere.
I was hoping somebody would know about that ending. Oh my God, that ending makes you. I mean, to me, that was more of a surprise than Sleepaway Camp ending. And that's a surprise to see that. But when you see the Deadly Blessing, that it just comes out of nowhere. Like it literally comes out of the floor. Holy crap, man!
I literally I have no clue.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to ruin it at all. If you haven't seen it,
I mean, I haven't seen it yet, but I'll give it a watch. But I did hear that a lot of people said they had problems with it. But I'll give it a watch one day. But it's just one of those movies that I heard about, but I was never able to find. I can't find it anywhere. Hopefully, if I can find it on DVD or something like that, Blu-ray. Do they have a Blu-ray of it?
Shout Factory just released it on Blu-ray. Yeah, it was out of print for years. It popped up on Netflix one day, and that's when I finally saw it. But going off what Steve said, I totally agree with everything you said. It was his kind of approach, because he was a guy. He was raised really strict, religious. I don't think he saw his first movie till he was in his teens. Wes Craven. So it was kind of his response to, or backlash, I should say, to religious upbringing. And it was all of these things, you know. But I mean, the movie is Sharon Stone, is Ernest Borgnine. You have some people that can act in there, but the one thing it misses, which I totally agree with Steve, it doesn't have that atmosphere because he didn't have the budget to do what he did. And it's funny because Last House had no budget. Hills of Eyes really had no budget, but he was able to capture that gritty atmosphere. This was the first movie where he went away from that and kind of into, like we were saying before, Steve, you came into the conversation, he's one of those guys that he wouldn't be afraid to try an experimental film. And to me, this was that, and it's a complete average movie to me. If I had to give a rating out of 5, it'd be a 2, 2.5 out of 5. There are good things in it. There are things that I like. There are things I don't like. But I agree. Watch it. Classic. It's not what you consider a Craven classic. I totally agree with Steve.
Yeah, I can't rate it. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe one day I will give it a watch. But like I said, I've heard like different things about it. I haven't heard much. I mean, I heard a little bit. I mean, I don't know. It's one of those movies where I've never seen before, and I can't find it, and I only heard a little bit about it, so I really can't give my thoughts on that much.
It won't blow you away. It's not like it's not something you have to see unless you're like a Craven completionist. It's not really like, don't kill yourself to get it. It's not one of those things that's like, oh wow, this is gonna be great. It's not a hidden gem. It's almost like you ever seen Eaten Alive by Tobe Hooper?
I've seen the commercial for it, but I've never. I want to buy it because it looked the atmosphere. I mean, I don't know. I want to get it because it looked like it was kind of like because it came out after Chainsaw and it kind of had the same look and you know I don't know.
It's basically Wes Craven's Eaten Alive of his career. It's like it was an experiment. They tried to get him to capture the atmosphere, and he kind of whiffed on it. It's not bad, but it's not great.
Yeah, but his next movie we're going to get to is a movie that, again, I have not seen yet, but I have heard a lot about. And I was able to watch it, and then when I went to go watch it, they took it off. I think it was Hulu or Netflix, I can't remember. I was going to go watch it, they took it off, and I couldn't watch it. So it was Swamp Thing from 1982. And I've heard a lot about this movie. I've heard mostly, decent things. I heard it was a pretty decent movie. It's PG. I don't think it is PG, so it doesn't really have much violence in it and stuff. But from what I've heard, it was decent. Some people said it was decent, but I don't know. I mean, I've heard more about this movie than Deadly Blessing, but I heard it was just a decent movie. It was just decent, okay, from what I've heard. I really can't talk a lot about it, but
I can't. I've never seen it either. I wouldn't even if you guys wanted to skip it because it's not like so horror.
Yeah.
Like
it's like a sci-fi-ish horror from what I've heard, or
it's based on the
fantasy, or not fantasy, but horror. It's under the category of horror sci-fi, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not. I have never. I actually seen Return of Swamp Thing, which I know is directed by him, but I've never seen Swamp Thing, so I really wouldn't know.
Yeah, same here. Steve, have you seen Swamp Thing?
I have seen Swamp Thing. I enjoy Swamp Thing quite a bit. I have a friend whose favorite superhero movie is Swamp Thing.
That's unique.
So,
that's cool.
And going off of that, Swamp Thing is just one of those flicks that's cheesy as heck, but
that's what I heard
funny
too. Like,
and just fun and a cool overall too. I don't know. It's just a good movie, I think, and it's not, yet again, it's not one of Wes's masterpieces, but I put it in his top 10 just because of how fun it is, and how much fun I've had with it, and, first time I watched Swamp Thing was basically on a double bill with Return of the Living Dead, so that's always fun.
That must have
and I think it's worth checking out.
Yeah, I'll definitely give it a watch one day. Actually, I was gonna watch it, but because it was on Netflix, or Hulu, or something, I can't remember, but it was on there. But when I went to go watch it, they took it off. So I was like, oh, that's a bummer. I was gonna watch it, but yeah. Again, I heard it was okay from what I've heard. But
can I add one thing really quick?
Yeah.
You were just talking about we were just talking about Deadly Blessing. The way that I watched Deadly Blessing was actually on YouTube, Nate, so you might be able to find it on there, if it's still up.
Okay.
But this was months ago, so.
Well, it's quite possible. I mean, I'll try to check it out. I'll look it up on and see if it's on there. Give it a watch, because I haven't seen it yet. But then again, I could watch it. It could be good. It could be bad. It could be So I don't know. But yeah, Swamp Thing. John Grande, if your friend wants to, have you seen Swamp Thing before?
No, I haven't seen it. I mean, something that I probably should, because I'm familiar with the comic and I have all of Alan Moyer's run of the comic, but I haven't seen the film.
Yeah, this is one of those Wes Craven that I don't really know a lot about. So, yeah, Swamp Thing, guys. I don't know. Swamp Thing, 1982. Next film.
Oh, there is that cut where Adrian Barbeau actually
you see her
getting naked, but that's
and a PG, and it's supposed to be
really all that
rating,
interesting.
So.
Yeah, that's the only thing I ever hear. I know there was a lot of cocaine on the set of that film. Like, that's all I really know. I know a lot of the backstory, but I've never seen it. It's one of those movies I'll eventually see. It's definitely something I'd like to see.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of cocaine on that set. It's a crazy movie. So.
Oh man. Next movie we get to is I seen it, and it's pretty bad. Hills Have Eyes Part 2.
Oh.
And this is the original Hills Have Eyes Part 2.
Aren't we supposed to be with the dead?
Oh God, that's one of the worst. I think
Wes Craven even said he didn't like the movie. I think he said he didn't.
He did because he needed money. That was it.
It's his worst film. I'll go ahead and say it. It's his worst movie. Like, I mean, My Soul to Take is really bad too.
Yeah, I heard that too.
But it's such a mess. It's such a cash grab movie. He was in financial debt. They asked him, just make a sequel to this. He did it solely for the money. There's a blind character in it that was like jujitsu, and there's a dog that has a flashback. And
oh God.
Yeah, they're all.
I remember when I watched this movie for the first time. It was actually on Netflix. And I remember I watched the movie for the first time, and I was like, did that dog just seriously have a flashback? I was like, did we just see a flashback from the dog's point of view? I was like, oh my God. And I was watching it, the acting is so bad. And I would say this, though, it was cool seeing Jupiter return, and, a decent idea of, of him and, Kane Hodder playing a mutant, First Lives in the Hills. And I don't know, I mean, in this movie, again, I do agree with what you said, John Grande. It is all over the place. The first movie was just so well shot. Here, it's just nothing. Even the trailer, I watched the trailer, and I hate that edit they put in there where it goes like, Ruby, the whole trailer. I'm like, just stop saying Ruby. But the movie is just, I agree with you. It's sloppy. It's all over the place. It's not well shot. And the score reminds me so much of Friday the 13th that I swear this score reminds me of a ripoff of like Friday the 13th. You listen to the score, I thought of Friday the 13th.
I mean, Harry Manfredini did the score, and that's why. It's basically just Friday the 13th in the Hills.
Yeah.
Those, like, you kind of...
It sounds just like it. It sounds just like Friday the 13th. And then they brought in this whole thing with traps, and I was like, yeah, it could be good. And then we got to the traps, and it was just like they weren't really that much. I mean, it's a cool idea to put it in the Hills of Eyes movie because it's like, okay, they're bringing a new idea, but just the traps, they weren't really that much. I mean, a spear shoots out, hits somebody. A rock on a rope hits with like spikes on it, tries to hit somebody. There's only like 2 mutants. You think about it, or two. I keep calling them mutants because in the remake it's mutants, but there's only 2 people in the hills. Kane Hodder really didn't do much. I mean, I don't know, and a lot of the acting was terrible. And Ruby in the movie coming back is but I mean, it could have been good if the acting was better. But I don't know. It's one of those sequels that's it's really bad. Like, really bad. If I do a review on it, it would be a rant because it's such a bad sequel.
I agree. It's one of those movies. It's also, just think about the plot of the movie for a second. Like, Ruby and a dirt bike gang decide to take a bus and drive through the same hills from the original film that they spent so long to try to get out of. The bus breaks down, and the terror. I mean, that's just. I mean, there's the term far-fetched right there. I mean, that is just far-fetched. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Even
not
the makeup effects weren't really that much. If you think about it, the effects weren't really that much either. Score, like I said, like Friday the 13th. I mean, Harry Manfredini did the score, but at least try to make it sound different. It sounds just like Friday the 13th. And I was like, okay, this is straight off of Friday the 13th. And even the kills, it tried to give it more of a slasher vibe, but kills weren't that much. And I don't know. The good thing about the original movie is that it had an atmosphere, and it wasn't like just random characters out in the desert. It was a family trying to survive the night and then to get revenge the next day. Hills of Ice Part 2 is it's all it is like you said, just a group of these kids with Ruby going out to the desert. They get killed off one by one, sort of in the same way. And Ruby it could have been a cool idea if Ruby came back. I mean, that's a cool idea, but for her to go back to the same place where she knows exactly where those people are, but yet she still continued to go back to the area. But yeah, it could have been good, could have been decent at least that she came back, but the acting was it was awful. It was just it was just a really bad movie, guys.
I would give it a 1 out of 5, and I
Same
also
here,
feel
1.
okay to give it that because Craven said himself that it was a bad film too.
Yeah.
I don't know what he had to say, what his response to My Soul Take. I don't know what he says about that movie. Like, I don't know how he feels about how people receive that, but this to me is honestly the ugly stepchild in his career, so to speak. Like, this is.
I mean, the movie gets a 3.7 out of 10 on IMDb, so
It deserves it.
Deserves every bit of it.
that just tells you, man, 3.0. Oh my gosh, that's so bad.
Okay, so let me talk a little bit about it for just a minute. So, I watched Hills Have Eyes 2 in a period of my life where I was watching a lot of Children of the Corn movies.
Love that franchise, by the way.
And here's the thing: it's a fun franchise. There's not many good movies in it.
No.
Every bit of them are better than Hills Have Eyes 2.
I agree, man.
And the thing is that Hills Have Eyes 2 is, like, first off, seeing a lot of Children of the Corn movies and then being, like, really disappointed by this movie was rather shocking. It's just a boring movie too. Like, it's not just that, like, the plot's crazy and everything. You could have a crazy plot, bad acting, and if it clips along at a good pace and it's got, some kind of entertainment factor, then it could have been at least, a so bad it's good movie. It doesn't even reach that level, man. Like, there's some stuff where you can watch it and laugh at it, but then, like, for the most of the movie, it just drags so much. It's so hard to watch it. And, you know, the bad thing is I'm probably going to eventually buy it on Blu-ray and watch it again because I'm a Craven completist. And that'll be one of the dumbest things I've done in my life. But still, it's just, I've got to say, it's probably up there with his worst movies. One movie, all right, at least I could finish Hills Have Eyes 2. I couldn't finish Vampire in Brooklyn, but let's not talk about that one yet.
Oh, that is... Yeah.
Vampire in Brooklyn.
People should give me an award just for starting to watch that movie.
I really don't want to watch Vampire. I have no really desire to see it. I was just, from the stuff that I've heard, I was just like, I don't want to watch this movie.
I have a bigger desire to watch Music of the Heart.
Oh, gosh. I mean, I don't know. Hills of Eyes Part 2, I guess I give it a 1 out of 5. Steve, what would be your rating for the movie?
It's a legend in among horror fans that Roger Ebert once gave The Hitcher 0 out of 5 stars, and it's one of the only movies he did that to. This is going to be one of the only movies I give 0 out of 5 stars to as well.
Yeah, guys, Hills of Eyes Part 2 is just really bad. But, you know, and honestly, the first time I went to go watch it, I honestly didn't know about the history behind it. I didn't know that it was considered one of the worst sequels, but, you know, I went to go watch the movie on Netflix. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, original Hills of Ice Part 2. And believe it or not, there's actually a Hills of Ice 3, but it has nothing to do with parts 1 and 2.
Yeah, it's called Castle 3.
Is it Mind? I thought it was called Mind Ripper or something like that.
No, it's called Castle 3.
Oh, yeah, it was like, it has nothing to do with this, but it's supposed to be a part 3. And then I also heard there's another movie called Mind Rippers. It actually has Lance Henriksen in it. It's about, like, building this stain, I guess, and it kills people, and it's some weird plot. It's supposed to be another sequel to Hills of Eyes, but then it has nothing to do. It's not called Hills of Eyes Part 3, but, like, I guess, sometimes I think it was like one of the alternate titles was Hills of Eyes Part 3 or Part 4 or whatever. Some weird stuff like that, but Part 2 is just, it's just one of those movies where I went to go into it, and I didn't know about how infamously bad it was, but I went to go into it, and I was like, alright, cool, Hills of Eyes Part 2. And I was like, at the end of the movie, I was like, oh my gosh, no.
Like, you questioned your life, you questioned everything. I was prepared for that. I was warned by everybody. Actually, I think Dead Pit may have been two of the people that warned me. That they were like, it is one of the worst movies ever, and it really, I have to agree with Steve. It's horribly paced. I agree. It's a movie I've gotten through twice. That is it. I cannot get it through it a third time.
I watched it one time.
I'll ever attempt to try to get through it again. It's just that it is that bad. It is a cure for insomnia.
The only time I would buy this movie for DVD is if I found it for $1. If I found this movie for $1 or $3, maybe $2, I know one thing. I'm not going over $3 for this movie. And from what I've heard, the DVD costs a little bit over that. But I don't know if I can find a copy just for the collection's sake, because the movie sucks, but I would think I would get it for the collection. But
I don't think I would take it if I actually found it on the ground and it was.
The only reason why I get bad movies is so that I can have them for the collection. Like Silent Revelation, I hate that movie. I hate the Thing prequel. I hate there's a lot of movies in my collection that I just don't like, but I have them for the sake of the collection.
Yeah.
And if I would find this for maybe $1, then I'd get Hills of Ice Part 2. But if it's over $1, maybe even $2, I'd go up to that, just maybe $2. But it's terrible. It's freaking awful movie. But yeah, Hills of Ice Part 2. Yeah, You guys got anything else to say about it? I mean, it's just bad.
No.
I think John should get a Nobel Peace Prize for watching it twice.
Yeah, exactly. I watched it one time, never watched it again. I was just like, I'm not watching this movie again. Like, literally, I was done watching, I was like this, I was like, well, I'm not watching that movie again. But, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what prompted me to watch it again. That was just an oddity. I have no unearthly idea why I watched it again. But what's the next movie?
The next movie is the classic Nightmare on Elm Street, which is from Wes Craven, of course, director, also the writer, I think. But of course, he is the writer. What am I saying? But
You
a
guys heard about
legendary
this movie?
film,
It's pretty good.
and
Yeah, I've heard
and
it. Little known.
I think it is. The next movie is Nightmare on Elm Street, I think. Yeah, it is. Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street is a classic, legendary horror film, and yeah. So I mean, I'll get more into details, but you guys can talk about it if you guys want to.
You want to start?
Yeah, sure.
All right, go
Nightmare.
ahead.
I'll just start by saying it's my favorite of the Wes Craven films. I just really love pretty much every aspect about it. I mean, if I was to give any nitpick, I guess. If I was to give it any nitpick, it'd be there are some points that are a little bit slow, but other than that, I could get through it because it's really just fantastic beginning to end. I think the Tina character is really good, just how for the first 20 minutes you believe that she's the heroine and she's going to be the main character, and they just kill her off in one of the most brutal ways. I just love... Freddy Krueger doesn't speak that much in the movie, but when he does, it's like this sinister, amazing lines, like when he just goes, "This is God," and just laughs maniacally. I love that. Just, I don't know, man. There's really not a whole lot I can say without repeating myself. It's just phenomenal. Phenomenal, phenomenal.
I agree with that. It's honestly, it's ironic that he made this after his worst movie because, in my opinion, this is his best movie. This is his masterpiece. This is his, Michelangelo painting, if you will. It's just so amazing what he was able to do. And if you watch the Never Sleep Again documentary, to hear about all the things that he was going through, and he sold the rights to this movie to New Line Cinema. That's how, just to get it out there, just to have an extra money to get it out there. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things that I was saying The Lightning in the Bottle before. This is the best movie of his career, and I think it always will be because he created the ultimate boogeyman in Freddy Krueger. He created the ultimate atmosphere of, like I was saying before, Janet Leigh, that's cute. She had her shower to get stabbed and killed in. Jamie Lee Curtis had her, house to be stalked by, and Adrienne King had her lake. But you can't escape your dreams. Sooner or later, you have to fall asleep. And there are all these little things added in the movie too, like the pot of coffee in her room just to stay awake, and some of the dream sequences and that brutal kill of Tina, and that almost, and I love she wants to take him out of his dream and into the real world. That's how he just set up such a great legend of this child murderer / molester, and he made one of the iconic horror characters. I mean, Freddy is up there with Jason. Freddy is up there with Michael Myers. Freddy is up there. I would say those are the big three. When I say Leatherface, Chucky, whatever, those would be, to me, minor compared to those. Those are the big three, and I think that there's no understating that he was maybe the last great horror icon invented. I mean, ever since Freddy, I don't think there's been something that has come along that has upped Freddy. There's not something after Freddy. I mean, there just really isn't. I think it's one of the great horror characters of all time, and I think it's one of the great horror movies of all time. It's a classic for a reason. It's his best movie.
I mean, I really don't know what else to say. I mean, I don't know and much more I can add on to that. I mean, it's just one of those movies that when you think of, because I watched a couple documentaries. They mentioned this. Freddy Krueger became, along with Jason, Michael Myers, became sort of the modern day Draculas and Frankensteins and stuff like that. And and we had these new horror icons, and that's what Freddy Krueger became. He became a horror icon, and it's such a genius idea of the movie. Think about it, because, like you guys said, I mean, it's just creepy thinking that, you can run away from Jason. Eventually, he'll catch you, but you can run away from him. You can run away from Michael Myers, and but when it comes to sleeping, you have to sleep eventually. There's no avoiding it. You can try to stay awake as long as you want. Eventually, you will fall asleep, and that's just knowing that alone, involving if you fall asleep, then you get killed. Then that just makes it really, really suspenseful, because then you're wondering, okay, so how long can these people stay up, and how long can they live? And it's such a great idea, and I love the story behind it too. How Wes Craven, when he was a kid, seeing this guy in the alley and freaked him out, and you hear about the stories over what was happening, where these kids were having these really bad dreams, and they started dying from their dreams, and he used that and developed this character, and it's become a horror icon. This is much more like like you guys said, a serious film. The sequel sort of got, especially when you look at films like Freddy's Dead, especially Freddy's Dead. I mean, when you got to that point, Freddy Krueger was just, it wasn't really as serious as it was before. He was, joking around, one-liners and stuff like that. But this movie made it really serious, and he was actually very scary in this movie, because the makeup effects on his face, the iconic look of the sweater with the green and the red, genius idea of green and red. It's the hardest color to see side by side. The idea of the glove, just all kinds of cool stuff. And I love the score to the movie. It's one of those movies where I want to get the CD and the score to the movie so much. It's such a great score, and it was done for so much. It was done for such a less amount of money. Like, it was crazy. Like, but it's a really good score that da, 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 da. When you hear that, you think Freddy Krueger. You just that's the choo 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 ha ha ha. To Jason, Freddy Krueger is that music. But it's just, I don't really know what else I can say. What more I can say? It's a classic. It's an absolute masterpiece of film, and it's a legendary horror film, and it's just a classic. I don't know what else. So many people talk about Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't know what else to say. It's a classic, and I would give it definitely a 5 out of 5. It's that good. Like, I love this movie.
Big 5.
How about you,
But
Steve?
then did Steve give his thoughts yet?
Oh, I haven't. Sorry, I've been listening to you guys. You've said everything. When I was a kid, my Aunt Carol showed me Jaws, and that's the first horror movie I ever saw when I was about 6 years old. And then shortly after, it was Gremlins. But the character that got me into real big, serious horror, and especially slasher movies, was the Freddy Krueger movies. And Nightmare on Elm Street will always hold a special place in my heart. There's never going to be a time where it's not in my top 5 horror movies, no matter what may come. It's sort of enshrined in me. The only thing that's like, there have been 3 movies to derail A Nightmare on Elm Street, and those have been Scream, Halloween, and The Exorcist, and those are the only 3 who I think ever could. Nightmare on Elm Street to me is sort of the perfect combination of 80s supernatural horror mixed with the slasher element. And talking about Wes Craven, he started the rape revenge movies. He saved slasher movies in the 80s, and he saved slasher movies in the 90s.
Yeah.
And he saved horror several times. And this is really the time where I think you first notice this guy is massively talented. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, we can talk about Last House on the Left, and it's his breakout movie, and he's obviously got a flair for the sick and twisted. But to show everything that he showed he could do in A Nightmare on Elm Street is just insane. The writing is wonderful in that movie. Like when I'm thinking about writing a horror story, I think about stuff like A Nightmare on Elm Street because the trappings are absolutely perfect. The characters are wonderful. The dialogue's great. There's not a bad performance in the movie, really. There's not a character that you don't sympathize with in some way. Except for Freddy, and that's exactly how it should be. You don't sympathize with Freddy at all because Freddy shouldn't be sympathized with. Freddy is, you know, if Jason is the Frankenstein's monster and Michael Myers is something like, I don't know, the Wolf Man or something like that, Freddy Krueger had to be Dracula because we needed the mouth. We had faces. We needed a mouth. And Freddy was the guy who was actually able to talk. He's just the perfect horror character, really, to me, I think. I mean, I love Michael Myers, and I love Jason, and I love, I guess you can either call him the devil or Captain Howdy or just Reagan in The Exorcist, but the most iconic, I think, of my life, and when I think about horror characters, I have to start thinking about Freddy Krueger. And a little tidbit to add in, if you go on the website for the National Film Registry, Nightmare on Elm Street is actually on the list of movies that have been nominated, and you can vote on to put in the National Film Registry. Halloween is actually already on that registry. I believe Texas Chainsaw Massacre is on there as well, as well as tons of other horror movies. But I believe that Nightmare on Elm Street would be the first 80s slasher to actually be on that film registry. So if you have a chance, it'd be a good idea to maybe go over there and give it a vote because it needs to be on the National Film Registry. It is one of those highly influential films that needs to be on there, and I personally think that Friday the 13th should be as well, but that movie's never going to get its day in the sun, no matter how many times we say it's awesome. But yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street is wonderful. It's a great movie. It's the movie that got me into horror movies, and yeah, it's my second favorite Wes Craven movie. If I can say all that good stuff about my second favorite Wes Craven movie, what am I going to say about Scream? Good Lord.
Exactly.
But I've actually got to get off here pretty soon, guys, so I just wanted to go ahead and comment on pretty much the movie that made me Wes Craven freak, and I'm really glad to have shared the moment with you guys. I'm sure you guys will have a great conversation the rest of the night. I'll definitely be listening to it tomorrow as I trudge through work. And yeah, I hope you guys have a good conversation. One thing I can say is besides Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream, my favorite Wes Craven films actually come in sort of a trilogy, I think. In 1988, he did Serpent and the Rainbow. In 89, he did Shocker. And he did a movie called Night Visions in the middle or something like that, but I've never seen that. And then after that, he did People Under the Stairs. And those three are also three of my favorite Wes Craven movies. I hope you guys have good conversations over those.
Yeah, I love those movies, so yeah. I love those. Those definitely are all, well, Shocker, Serpent and the Rainbow, and People on the Stairs. I consider them all three classics, but yeah.
But John, it was really good to actually meet you, I guess, screen to screen. see the face behind the voice of the Dead Pit Caller. So I hope you. I'll definitely see if I can subscribe to your channel if I can find it. And it was really good talking with you. And I don't think I met your friend. What's your friend's name there?
Will.
Hello.
Nice to meet you, Will. I'm Steve. But yeah, thanks for letting me on here, Nate. I really appreciate it. And I've had a great time. I hope you guys have a great finish to your night.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. Thanks for being a part of the broadcast. I really appreciate it, man. And yeah, these are really fun to do. I really do enjoy doing these things, and thank you for being a part of it, man.
No problem, brother. Have a good finish.
Nice to meet you, Steve. Have a good night, man.
See ya.
Nice to meet y'all too.
See you. Bye, Steve.
Bye.
All right. Well, the next movie we're gonna get to is by the way, guys, go subscribe to RedBand Cast channel if you guys haven't done that yet. Really
I
good
think I already
channel.
am.
Yeah.
Sure.
But next one we're gonna get to is a film that I've heard about called Deadly Friend, which came out in 1986 as a 5.5 on IMDb. Now, I did hear about the story. The story sounds a little bit weird. And it's, from what I've read, it's about, this dude's friend end up getting hit by her father by a car, and he's gonna try and bring her back, and he basically, by implanting robotic microchips into her brain. I don't know. I mean, I've never seen it before. I want to give it a watch because I've heard some good things about it, but I don't know. I've never seen it before, but it sounds pretty out there. I mean, you think about the idea. I mean, it definitely does seem like, one of those one of a kind horror films. So, I mean, I'll give it a watch one day.
Yeah, this is the only movie I think released theatrically on this list that I haven't seen either. I've seen the Anne Ramsey fabled basketball scene, and it's all for that. I mean, that is one of the funniest kills in any horror movie I've ever seen. That is classic stuff. I mean, it's Christy Swanson and Anne Ramsey. You can find it on YouTube. And Christy Swanson's like an android. She takes a basketball and she just throws it, and it hits Anne Ramsey in the face.
Oh,
and like her whole head explodes from the basketball, and then like it's awful animatronics. Like the whole body just kind of twitches, and it is so horrible. It is funny. Like you will laugh your ass. Like I had to replay it like 10 times. It is one of the funniest. Like one of those things. Watch it 100 times. It's still funny. But honestly, I'm not too familiar with it. I haven't seen it through. I just know that scene, and that's pretty much it. Deadly Friend. I'm sorry, I can't touch more upon that one.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. I know that scene. I didn't even know it was from that movie, or that Wes Craven of all people made that. So.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I've never seen it. I'll definitely give it a watch one day if I can find it. I mean, again, it's one of those movies where I can't really find it. I'll definitely check out that scene. It sounds hilarious, but I'll definitely check out that. I haven't seen that scene yet, so it just sounds hilarious. So I'll go check it out. But yeah, I mean, I've heard from some people that it was good. I've heard from some people that it was terrible. But yeah, so I don't really have much to say about Deadly Friend. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, neither have I.
Yeah, that's Deadly Friend, and that is from 1986. And the next movie we're gonna get to, hang on, guys, I just put up on a list on IMDb, and it's just like a list of his the movies he's directed. The next movie is The Serpent and the Rainbow. Heck yeah, man! I could not wait to talk about this movie. Serpent and the Rainbow, of course, came out in 1988, and I love this movie. I have to say that I love Serpent and the Rainbow. I think it's a classic horror film, and I just love the idea behind it, and and how it's dealing with over in Haiti and the whole voodoo aspect. It was handled very well. A lot of creepy imagery in the movie. A lot of memorable dialogue, like that one scene that I always remembered where he's like, "What did you dream about this afternoon?" The woman in your arms? The sea at your doorstep? No, it was me. I know because I was there. The pain that caused in the room upstairs is nothing than a pain that can cause in your own mind. Just a great scene, and has a great bad guy in it, and practical effects, a lot of crazy scenes in the movie that are just straight up insane. Like there's a scene where a guy rips his head off and throws it at the camera. You know, especially the end of the movie. The end of the movie is freaking insane because he goes to this building. There's all kinds of crazy stuff happening. Serpent in the Rainbow is definitely a great horror film. I love it. I think it's well shot. I think it's well made, well directed. Has a good script behind it. I love the idea of it taking place in Haiti and discussing the whole situation with Haiti and and the voodoo aspect of it. And Bill Pullman did a good job in the movie. Great acting performance by him, and just a really well made horror film. It's got suspense. It's got your practical effects in there. You got some really just freaky scenes that'll stick with you forever, and you'll remember them. Lines of dialogue that's just so memorable. Like that scene I just mentioned. It was just so memorable, and you have a great finale. Got that scene where it's really cringing, where Bill Pullman is tied to this chair, and he pretty much gets a huge nail hammered into his penis, and it's just freaking. It's really just cringing if you're a dude, but yeah, I love Serpent in the Rainbow. I really just have nothing else to say. I just love it. It's a classic, and I'm a huge fan of the movie. And I would give it a 5 out of 5 again. I think it's just a classic.
To be honest with you, I've seen the movie twice. The first time I think I watched with you when I got my PlayStation 3.
It was the first thing we ever watched on Netflix.
Yeah, it was the first movie I ever watched on Netflix, and it was obviously because it was Wes Craven directed. And to be honest, we were young at the time, and I don't know if either of us really could appreciate it as much as I did the second time I watched it. I don't think you've watched it the second time.
No, I'll get to that.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, see, Will is the definite opposite opinion as yours, Nate. But I wasn't too keen on it the first time I watched it, but the second time I watched it, you realize that, again, like we were saying before, it was an experiment. He touched on voodoo-like zombies. You had Return of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead, which is the poster behind me, Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, all these zombie movies coming out, and then Craven said, I'm going to go back to the 20s. I'm going to go back to like white zombie-like kind of zombies. And, I think it was based on a novel, if I'm not mistaken. I think the movie is actually pretty good. I think it has a decent enough atmosphere, and I think the acting, the performances, and like you said, I think it does have some memorable lines. What do you, to hear you scream? What do you want to hear? To hear you scream. That's one of the coolest lines and badass. And then Bill Pullman kind of turns the tables at the end and says that to the villain. And I think it is a lost classic of Craven's. It's not as appreciated as A Nightmare on Elm Street, as A Hills Have Eyes, as The Last House. But I wouldn't put it up there with those movies. I don't know if I could, because it's a thing I've only seen it twice kind of thing. I like it. I think it's good. I would give it a 4 out of 5, if not a 3.5 out of 5. It's 3.5, 4 range. It's just one of those movies I haven't had the fortune to see enough times to really appreciate it. Although I don't hate it like him. I know he doesn't like it at all. So we'll let you rant and rave.
Yeah, so I'll give it like a 1 out of 5. You know what? I think there's a reason why the Haitian voodoo zombie thing died in the 1920s. It's just not interesting to me. You have all the Romero stuff, and even that more now, like you have the Dawn of the Dead remake, you have 28 Days Later, all this more...
The Infected People movies.
Yeah, all these more interesting approaches to it, and to just go back to this like gothic voodoo thing, it wasn't what I was expecting. It wasn't what I wanted at all. It's not what I want out of a zombie movie. I don't know, man. Like, I get that voodoo is a real, like, belief system and practice, whatever, but it's it comes off to me as so cheesy and such a like a cop out, like a 50s Marvel comic gives me voodoo. I don't want that anymore. That it's a relic, you know. I mean, maybe like you seem to really be into it, so I guess there's something that I'm missing.
Well, we were also really young when we watched that movie. That's why I always wanted to revisit it, and I did like it more upon the second viewing. If I see it a third time, I bet you I'd like it more again. It's one of those movies I kind of have to warm up to, and I think if you saw it again, you'd probably have a different.
Maybe.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think like the reason it was so effective when I seen it, I mean, the first time I watched Serpent in the Rainbow, I think I was like 9 or 10, and I actually got in a really cool 3-pack. It came with People Under the Stairs, Shocker, and Serpent in the Rainbow. And I watched it on there, and I remember just being so freaked out just by the scenes and the voodoo stuff. I've seen a lot of movies where the voodoo stuff can kind of get a little bit goofy. I can agree with that. If it's not handled well, I do think it can get really goofy. And you know, I just think that in this movie, it's mentioned. It's definitely a big part of the story, but I just don't think it was like. I don't think it was as goofy as some other movies I've seen that I've seen some other movies that are just really goofy with the whole voodoo theme. But I think like films like this and a little bit of Lucio Fulci's Zombie, I think that has to deal with voodoo a little bit as well. It's handled well. I mean, I don't know. It's not as silly to me like as I've seen other movies, and I've like laughed at that idea. But I think it was just handled in this movie very well. And I liked Bill Pullman as a lead. I thought his acting was pretty good. And just it has a lot of stuff to it that I just really, really enjoyed. But I mean, it's definitely a story that is either your cup of tea or it's not your cup of tea. It's about voodoo, and I don't really watch a lot of voodoo movies either. Most of the ones I've seen that deal with voodoo, I do agree they're really silly. But this is one of those very few voodoo movies that I've seen that I really got into. And I just think it was because of acting and practical effects and just scenes in the movie that just stuck with me when I was a kid watching this, like, and freaked me out so much. But yeah, I just really enjoy Serpent in the Rainbow. Like, I'm a really huge fan of it.
Yeah, it's a movie I'm definitely going to revisit sometime soon down the road, and sooner than rather than later. It's just one of those. It's just I don't own it, honest. I actually, you talk about the 3-pack. I have the 2-pack of Shocker and People Under the Stairs. So I have seen those two a lot more than I've seen Serpent in the Rainbow. And it's not that I prefer those two. It's just that I kind of grew up with those two more than Serpent in the Rainbow. I also think Serpent in the Rainbow is much more of an adult movie than Shocker and People Under the Stairs. Like, you can show People Under the Stairs to a 7-year-old kid, and I bet you they'd love it. It's just it's almost like a horror movie, Home Alone. It's just so, it really is. Yeah. It's so fun for a child to watch, and it's all his touches on poverty and all these things. And Shocker is just, well, I guess we're going to get to that next. But Serpent in the Rainbow is definitely one I'm going to revisit soon. And it's definitely like, I like, when I'm done, I'll just totally message you and talk to you about it, Nate, because you seem like a really big fan for the movie. And I always like
I love it. It's just one of those horror movies that is, and it's not just like this is the only. There's a lot of horror movies out there that, have like cult followings and stuff, and it's either your cup of tea or it's not. And it's cool. I mean, most of the voodoo movies I've seen, I agree with your friend. Like they are really silly sometimes. But I think this was just handled very well. But yeah, so Serpent and the Rainbow, I'd give it a 5 out of. I think I already rated it, but I gave it a 5 out of 5.
Yeah, I'd go 3.5 or 4. But if I see it again, I bet you'd go 4.5. I bet you'd keep rising. It's one of those movies that I feel like I just have to warm up to.
Yeah. But the next movie we're going to get to is another movie that I absolutely love, and that is Shocker! Shocker! I see your city burning. I can't remember all the lyrics, but it's a freaking awesome song.
Yeah,
of course, Shocker from 1989. Gets a 5.4 on IMDb, and to touch on this a little bit, there's a lot of people who don't like this movie, and I was actually surprised by it because I watch pretty much these movies in a row. I watched Serpent and the Rainbow. I watched Shocker, and I love that movie. I love Shocker. And then I watched People Under the Stairs. Or it might have been People Under the Stairs, Serpent. I don't know. I can't remember the exact order and how I watched them, but I do know that I watched all three of those movies within like 2 days. And I just the first time I got it, I just watched one movie one night, watched two movies the next day. But I seen Shocker, and people say that this movie is very similar to Elm Street. You got a killer with personality and charisma. Sort of Horace Pinker in this movie did. I mean, the guy who played him did a good job. Of course, he's from the X-Files as well, but this is probably Mitch Pileggi. This is probably his best performance. Like, he did an awesome job in this movie. But people have problems with it because it deals with somewhat dreams, and it's somewhat similar to Elm Street, and it's just some people don't really like the movie. They feel like it was repeating, that Wes Craven was repeating himself. I don't really see that. Personally, I think it's dealing with this really cool idea of a killer being involved in electricity, and it's an extremely cool idea that I love, and I think it's a lot different than Elm Street. I can say this though: the dream scenes, they are a little bit similar to Elm Street, especially when you got the idea that he sees his family or he sees somebody die in his dream. They died in real life. Okay, that was kind of like Elm Street, but the movie is well shot. I love the soundtrack. Another one of those movies I want to get the CD too. Great score, great acting, great lead. The guy who was the lead did a good job. Cool idea. Horace Pinker, awesome character. Really enjoyed the idea of an electric, a killer that gets shocked by the electric chair and comes back and gets, revenge out of electricity. Just a cool idea.
No
A lot
more
of memorable scenes and stuff. But I think it's just a great movie. I think it's a lot different, or at least it is a different movie than Nightmare on Elm Street. But I can see a little bit of similarities. But I do think it's I could say it's its own movie. But I do see why some people would say that it is similar to Elm Street. But I think that Shocker is its own movie. Like, I love Shocker. I give it a 5 out of 5 again. Just a classic. Love it.
To me, I've seen Shocker enough times, and it's one I'm definitely a lot more familiar with. I've watched it again and again, and I think there are a few things that, other than what you said, that it gets its due, and it doesn't get its fair due. And one being that Wes, admittedly in interviews around this time, said that this was going to be the next Freddy Krueger, that this was going to be the next horror icon that he would create. And I think, as smart of a man as he was, as big of a genius as he was, I think it was the biggest mistake of his career, even more so than Hills of Ice 2, because that helped him finance Nightmare. You can't go on a talk show and say, this is the next big thing, because when that people are going to compare it to the last big thing, and that was Nightmare on Elm Street. It was Freddy Krueger. And right there, I'm sorry, I liked the Horace Pinker character. He's no Freddy Krueger. Who is? You know what I'm saying? At the same time, it sounds like a knock, but it's really not. I mean, Horace Pinker was a cool character. It was a different character. It was like Steve was saying before, horror needed a voice. And we had that voice in Freddy Krueger. And this was, okay, I'm going to just do that again. It doesn't work like that. Nothing works like that with film. Did Tobe Hooper ever make a movie as good as Texas Chainsaw Massacre? No. The answer is no. He tried with Eaten Alive. It didn't work. Funhouse, slasher movie, pretty good slasher movie. But it's just something you kind of, Romero did it with Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead. It's something you fall into. And when you say that in interviews going around the world and saying, this is the next big thing, you can't fall into it because you're trying to make the next big thing. You're not just kind of going with the flow. And I think that turned a lot of people off to this movie. Another thing that turned a lot of people off to this movie was the hokiness of it. There's a lot of hokiness of it. Do I love the soundtrack? Absolutely. Do I love the climatic, television chase scene when they're going from screen to screen and, you know, fighting in the living room with this fat lady, and like that. I love that. That is so funny to me. That is so my humor. But I could see how some, you know, snobby, oh, this is stupid. I could see some saying some of the lines, finger looking good, you know. A lot of people don't like that. And I understand the gripes for the movie. I honestly understand why people hate it. I personally don't, though. I think it's one of those movies that it's like, it's almost, you could be a kid again. You could turn your brain off. There are some ideas introduced dream-wise there, but it's a fun movie. And Peter Berg gives a great performance as the lead. I mean, when they kill his girlfriend, when Horsefinger kills his girlfriend and writes, you know, on the wall in the blood, I mean, that's a really powerful scene, and he does a really good job at pulling that off as Wes Craven. I just think there are certain things that people don't get over. And I think it was the fact that, one, it was so hokey. It, you know, and also it's one of those notorious movies that, oh, it has that 80s soundtrack. But I love that about it. But certain people don't. I mean, that's their line. And I think it was just, you know, a lot of people weren't ready for it. I think a lot of people were saying, okay, this is the next big thing. And then when it wasn't, it was almost like the biggest of letdowns. And I don't think if the movie gets its fair due, and I don't think it ever will, like Steve was saying about Friday the 13th. I put it up there with Halloween. I put it up there with Nightmare. It'll never get its fair due because it's not as well made as Halloween or Nightmare. It's just not. And that's sad to think about. But Shocker, to me, is a really fun movie. I would show it to kids. I think it's a perfect kid horror film. I mean, yes, there are some language in there. There's some brutal death scenes. But it's ultimately a really, really fun movie to watch. When I was younger, it's one of those movies I grew up with. But in the long run, I understand the gripes. I just don't have many with the movie. It's not perfect. I would give it like a 4 out of 5, 3.5 again, 3.5, 4 range again. It's not perfect. There are some things that I don't like about it, which I don't want to get into because enough people are negative about Shocker. But I would give the movie a 3.5, 4 out of 5. I think it doesn't really get its due, and I don't think it's really fair. What do you think?
Yeah, I really like it. I think the fact that it is kind of hokey and it is like a cheesy Nightmare on Elm Street is why I love it personally. I think, because like I kind of think it's almost like if R.L. Stine wrote A Nightmare on Elm Street, that's what Shocker would be. Because just like how 80s it was, how fun the main character has that thing, he has to deal with the Horace Finker character, and he's going up to all these people saying, "Oh yeah, so this murderer was electrocuted. Now he's attacking me," and people just believe him.
Yeah. His friends believe him at the end to cut. That's a problem. That's one of the problems I have. Yeah. You wouldn't believe him.
you always like, no, don't do that. I'm like, yes, but it's funny.
If you told me that there was an electrical killer going around, I would probably be like, hey, you watched Stalker too much, or I wouldn't believe you. You know what I mean? It's a nitpick, but it is kind of a...
I mean, I get why you're like, what? But I'm like, but you know what? Who cares?
Exactly, but I'm saying that's why people are hard on the movie. That's why it gets the proverbial 5.4 out of 10 on IMDb. It's because it is hokey, and it's because it's not afraid. I think it was ahead of its time, really.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways. I don't think the world.
Yeah, I would say that too. I mean, it's just. I mean, I definitely agree with you, man. Like, when I watched it as a kid, this is one of those horror movies that I just had a lot of fun with, and I still have a lot of fun with. I love this movie, and it was just, I think it was just because, like you guys said, I mean, it has an 80s feel to it. It's not scary. I will say this is not a scary movie, but it is a fun horror film. When you watch it, it's fun.
You turn your brain off. You turn your brain off when you watch it. It's one of those movies. If you try to make sense out of everything and you try to say like, oh well, that's silly, like you can't do that. It's just one of those movies. Just shut up, eat your popcorn, drink your pop, and enjoy this.
Yeah,
because it's
definitely a fun. It's one of those fun horror films that you know, it's you just cannot take it super serious. It's one of those movies that it's just and there's a lot of scenes that, you know, people have said they don't like. You know, the scene where he's worshiping the TV god. That was a little that was a little too silly, too much. But you know, I thought it was it wasn't like so bad. Like I heard like a lot of people said they hate that scene, but I don't think it's that bad. I think it's a little, you know, too much, but you know, not as bad as I hate that scene or anything like that. But you know, there's also a lot of fun with the possession of people, and you know, possessing the little girl and her, you know, driving that she gets in that, you know, vehicle and starts driving and cussing at everybody, and you know, and the lead the lead, in my opinion, did a good job. I mean, you know, his acting performance was pretty decent. Practical effects were there, and even the special effects they used weren't really that bad. I mean, you know, the shocking effects, you know, and I love the end of this. I love the end of the movie. It's just so fun where they go into the TV and, you know, they're fighting and they're going along these different movies and different TV shows. I just love that. I love this movie. It's so fun, and I do agree though. It is nowhere near as good as, you know. It doesn't have the legendary status as Nightmare on Elm Street, but I do think that it's definitely a well-made, fun horror film that
I
you know,
totally
you
agree.
don't take serious. You know.
I totally agree. I think, and just the last thing I'll say about this before we move on to People Under the Stairs, I think what you said in the TV, and people laugh at that, and people say, but at the same time, you know what people never say? They never say when something works in a horror film, they don't point it out. Like Freddy's glove, that is iconic. All three of us, me, you, Steve, Will, we all find that iconic because it worked, because he was a child molester, because you believed the story, because it was well done. With Shocker, it's almost like people say, oh, well, that's stupid. But what if that caught on? What if there was a big trend about it? Remember the whole Heath Ledger thing with The Dark Knight? Nobody thought that would catch on. Everybody said, oh, well, Jack Nicholson's my Joker, and that's it. That will never change. And then he made it his own. He made it cool. He made it, why so serious? You see those posts all over the world.
He made it his Joker. You know, that was his Joker.
Yeah,
you know, that was the Heath Ledger Joker.
He made it his own. That's its own entity now. And then whatever Jared Leto has to do in the Suicide Squad to reinvent it.
That's his own version too.
Exactly. And I think it's just unfair to kind of judge it and compare it to, you know, the hockey mask, the glove. It's just not, he's not one of those guys, and nor should you compare it to any of those guys. It's just one of those things that I think he really shot himself in the foot a little bit when saying this is the next big thing, because it really wasn't. I love the movie. I really like the movie. I think it's a fun watch. I can understand the gripes people have, but it's one of those movies that's never going to get its due. You know, three of us really like it. What would you give it?
I give it a 3.5.
Yeah, I'd say 3.5, 4 out of 5. I don't love it as much as Nate, maybe because the movie coming up next, I really love. I mean, that's close to 5.
The next movie we're talking about is also awesome, but yeah, Shocker from 1989. I like I said, I mean, I do agree with you guys. Like, it does get a lot of hate. A lot of people don't like the movie, but you know, personally, I have a lot of fun with it, and I think it's a great horror film. It's a fun horror film. The next movie is another classic, another masterpiece, The People Under the Stairs, which came out in 1991. It's a 6.3 on IMDb, and I have to agree with you guys. Like, this is probably, well, one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I mean, and same with Shocker and Serpent Under the Rainbow. Like, I love those movies too. Those are definitely some of my favorite horror movies of all time. But this one was just, as a kid watching it, it was just such an experience. You know, I love the performances by the mom and the dad, which you found out to be brother and sister, but you know, I love their performances. They did a good job playing Psycho. Reggie the Reckless was awesome. Good lead. And I like the idea, and so many fun and good ideas behind it. You know, it's just such a classic movie because you know the classic story of them going in the house and stuff, and you know Reggie sort of being trapped in this house and finding out what happened, and you know these two people were stealing children and stuff, and you know it's just a very classic story, and I love this movie. I think it's well shot. I think it has an amazing atmosphere and really good practical effects, and a amazing score, and I think it's just an amazing horror film. Definitely one of my favorite horror films of all time, and yeah, I love People Under the Stairs.
Go ahead if you want to.
All
I
right.
give it a well, another 5. I just love it. I give another 5.
Yeah, Wes Craven Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do like the film. I guess you would call it a horror, but it doesn't really even play like that too much to me. Like it's really kind of like you said. It's like Home Alone almost. Just remember it's been a while since I've seen the movie, so on names I blank a bit.
Cool.
But yeah, but like the one kid who like was one of the people under the stairs, and he like comes out a lot. You know,
He was also in Laid to Rest as well.
Is it
I
Justin
believe.
Williams? His real
Yeah.
no, his real name. Oh my. What is his name? I should know this.
well, you've had every other trivia, so
Yeah.
so
I know he was in Laid to Rest too. Like he played like the lead sort of escaped kid that you know is that's basically not one. Well, he is one of the people on the stairs, but he's in the walls, and
yeah,
very cool idea, and just you know his character was well done, good acting.
yeah, him. That was just such an interesting character to me, and the whole navigating the walls, all of those sequences was just really interesting to me. And I liked how it actually had a really nice, tidy, happy ending at the end, which isn't anything that I don't think any of the movies we've talked about yet have had.
His name was Roach, by the way.
Roach. There
Roach.
I looked it up.
Internet. We have that now. Yeah, so no, it's just like I think it's one of Craven's like lesser knowns, but it's just like the purest, I guess, because like it just has it's like such an like with Fool, he's just like such an optimistic character, and it pays off for him in the end. Like it's such a happy ending.
Yeah, I mean it's just one of those horror movies that just the story is so memorable. And I remember when I watched it, I just loved this movie as a kid. And the story is just like I said, it's so memorable. The story behind the story of People Under the Stairs, it's definitely one that people remember, people talk about. And I really enjoyed the movie. I think it has some really good effects behind it. Some good ideas behind it. It's definitely one of those horror films. Again, not to be taken too seriously. It does have a darker side to it. I have a feeling like it's one of those movies where it's sinister, but it also has a touch of fun to it. It does have its very dark moments. You know, when the daughter's getting abused, or you know, you realize how Fool was living, and but it also does have those fun moments, like the dad running around in the S&M outfit and shooting the walls and screaming, and then shooting the walls with a shotgun and stuff. It's crazy. And then you got the dog chasing them, and you know the idea of Roach being on the walls. It's such a crazy, fun, memorable horror film, and I just love it.
It has the thing that's so cool about it. It has fun with being what it wants to be. It's not trying. It's to me, it's miles better than Shocker in and of the fact that it was like he realized that maybe he had maybe gone too far in Shocker with saying what he said about the movie in interviews. So with this was almost like, you know what, I'm just going to make a fun horror movie that I enjoy, that hopefully everybody else will enjoy. And he has hints of when they give the girl a hot bath. You know, that's brutal to watch, and they make her clean up Ving Rhames' blood off the floor. But it also has scenes where Fool runs out of the wall, punches Daddy in the balls, and is like, "What's up, Fool?" He runs back.
Or he takes the slingshot. He goes, "You can run," or something like that. Takes the slingshot and hits him right in the forehead with a rock. And he goes, "Oh."
Yeah, hits him with the back of the toilet bowl.
Oh yeah.
Like there's so many funny, and also when the cops finally go to their house, there are so many funny. Like he's wearing like a top hat now, and he takes it off and like blots his head of blood, you know, while the cop has his back turned. Like little things like that are just so impactful, and they're funny and they're interesting, and like you know you get it's almost like also an asylum movie in a way. You know, the goal is to get out, and he finds his way to get out, and he goes into the roof and the attic, and he slides down, and then later when he goes back to save the girl, she's like, "Oh, they filled it with glass and all these things," and it's like, okay, wow, you know, now you really can't get out. It has a little claustrophobic feel to it, and I think it's just one of those movies that, again, I think he realized he tried too much with Shocker. He tried too much to make that next big thing. And he said, you know what, I'm just going to – it's almost like what Carpenter did after The Thing. He made Christine. Yeah. Christine was a fun, little, cool horror movie. He said, you know what, I'm sick of trying to impress everybody. Let me just make this start small. Start with what got me to the dance. And I think The People Under the Stairs is that and then some. I would give it – if it's not a 5 out of 5, it's a 4.5 out of 5 for me. I honestly, like, it's a 5 out of 5 for me. And I normally don't throw that rating out. I only threw it out with Nightmare and Last House, but it really is a 4.5, 5 for me because I just love it. I go back to it a lot, even to this day. I show it to people a lot. They love it. It's just one of those movies that anybody and everybody can like and get into, and I think that's the power of it. It's not too stupid. It's just I think everybody can like it. It's one of those movies that's just so likable.
Yeah, and it's also kind of a weird movie in that there are all the lighthearted, funny moments, like you said, but it really it's really fucked up when you actually realize what's going on in that house. It's like, oh, see no evil, speak no evil. But we're gonna, like, there are people with no eyes, no ears, no tongues, and all that. It's like, oh, if you mess up once, mommy and daddy are gonna throw you in the basement and lock you there. Like, it's like, yeah, it's like an asylum thing. Like
it's really well done.
It's really fucked up. But then there are all these light moments to it.
So I do agree with that whole asylum. I do agree with that. It definitely does have that feel to it. You know, them trying to get out of the house. I agree with that. Definitely. But
would you want to continue this in like a part 2 tomorrow? Because I feel like if we keep going, it's gonna be like 4 in the morning by the time we.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to just stop it here? Or?
Well, yeah. I mean, we just cracked the surface on the '90s, right?
Yeah.
So this.
Yeah.
Could you change the title?
Actually, like 1? Yeah, it's actually a good stop. But yeah, guys. I want to say thanks to John Grande. I'm a big fan of your channel, man. Big fan of your work, and I want to say thanks for joining the broadcast, man. Thanks. I want to say thanks to his friend as well for joining the broadcast. You guys are awesome, and I really enjoyed this, man. I really enjoy doing these because it's really fun, and I love hearing other people's opinions on films, and because that's why I get friends on here and stuff, and I just love hearing different opinions on things, and I just love that fact about doing these broadcasts as well, and it's also cool because we just hang out and talk about horror films, and I mean, can't get better than that. I mean,
always a good time.
Yeah.
When would you be available to do like a part 2 to this, or like later this week? Next week?
I don't know. Maybe later on the week. Maybe a Thursday or a Friday. I don't know.
All right. Just totally let me know and see if Steve would be willing to come back. I'm going to be busy Friday because I am actually, ironically, going to a Nightmare on Elm Street double feature. It's only a couple towns over. They're showing both movies in 35 millimeters, so I'm going to that.
Awesome.
But I would love to do part 2. I would love if Steve came back, your friend Andre, or whoever else you said. I'm sorry, I don't really remember the names. But dude, it was the same. Likewise for me, I'm a big fan of your channel, and it was really fun to shoot the shit on some Craven, if you will. we'll totally finish next time. I guess would be New Nightmare would be the next.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, so I'll definitely maybe try to rewatch one of those.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for joining, guys. And thanks for watching, guys. And thanks for watching part 1. And I'll see you guys on next review.
Adios.
Bye, guys. See you guys later.